I mentioned in the earlier video that I believe that Cleveland's problems so far were mainly internal and fixable. And with the season hitting the halfway point, I thought I'd elaborate on what I think is hurting the Browns and how to fix them. So I'm going to break this down in 3 parts and assign each party a piece of the blame pie. So first up, now, the first part is going to be Baker Mayfield and company. Now, what this includes is Baker Mayfield and the wide receivers. Nick Chubb is obviously not a reason why this team has not lived up to potential so far. He has been the only reason they have won 2 games so far. So Nick Chubb is excluded from this evaluation. But when it comes to Baker and company, there's a lot of blame to throw around, and mainly, unfortunately, a lot of that blame is going to be at the hands of Baker Mayfield. Right now, Baker Mayfield has thrown a league-high 11 interceptions. Regardless of who is at fault, that is way too many interceptions. That is way too many times for a ball to get tipped and picked off. That is way too many times for the ball to be turned over for a team to be successful. 11 in 6 games is just not acceptable, no matter what the circumstances is of that. And when you look at the rest of Baker's stat line, it is really unacceptable that there are that many interceptions. When you look at the fact that he's only thrown 5 touchdowns and has a dismal 56% completion percentage. He's taken 16 sacks and he's yet to have a turnover-free game this season. Now, look, I know a lot of people are going to throw a lot of blame on the company, right? There's going to be a lot of blame thrown on the wide receivers for tipping balls in the air and not catching them. Whether the ball's being tipped up by the wide receiver or it's just pure bad luck or the ball's a little bit misplaced and the wide receiver didn't make a play for it, the 11 interceptions is not acceptable. And sure, are there a few interceptions that are completely not Baker Mayfield's fault? Yes, I would say 2 of the interceptions last week were not Baker Mayfield's fault at all. And I would say the 1 interception in San Francisco was definitely not Baker Mayfield's fault. But still, even with those taken out, the ones that are undoubtedly not his fault, you're at about 9 interceptions, which is 5 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. The interception number could be acceptable if the touchdown number was higher, but since the touchdowns are so low, the completion percentage is so low, and the interceptions are so high, you can't help but look at Baker Mayfield as one of these sole problems in the offense. He has to play better. He has to see the field better. He has to be able to stay calmer under pressure. The fact of the matter is, when Odell Beckham has been able to get the ball, he's been able to have a big game. When Jarvis Landry has been able to have the ball, he's been able to have a big game. When Nick Chubb is able to run the ball, he's been able to have a big game. The only person who has not had a statistically great game yet is Baker Mayfield, because he's thrown too many interceptions, he's not thrown enough completions, and he's definitely not thrown enough touchdowns. And I don't think these are permanent problems with Baker Mayfield. I think these are just current ruts that he's in, because these numbers are so statistically far away from his normal. He's normally a high completion percentage guy and a high touchdown guy, and not normally a high interception guy if you look at his history in college. But again, this is the NFL. But I think where these numbers start to get skewed and why these numbers are so bad and why the team has not performed well is that Baker Mayfield has been so much worse in one specific area of the field, and that is in the red zone. Now, that could be because of multiple reasons. Maybe it's because they have shorter wide receivers. It's something I brought up in the offseason. Odell Beckham is not 6'3". He is 6 foot. Jarvis Landry is also 6 foot. Antonio Callaway, 6 foot. Rashard Higgins, 6 foot. And you don't have a reliable tight end option like David Njoku. I said earlier that Demetrius Harris and David Njoku were going to be huge factors in this team's red zone execution in the passing game. And none of those players have stepped up or been able to step up. So that is a huge reason why Baker Mayfield's execution in the red zone has just been so awful, is because he doesn't have a great array of targets. And I don't think he is comfortable enough with Jarvis Landry or Odell Beckham enough to hit them consistently on these timing routes. I don't think that's his strong suit. So how many pieces of the pie does Baker Mayfield gets to hold so far in the season? He gets 4 pieces out of 10 of this pie, a healthy chunk of this pie, because, well, he has not played well. Whether the interceptions are a overblown number or not, the 56% completion percentage is not, the touchdowns are not. All of those numbers, the 16 sacks, the not having a turnover-free game yet this season, all of those numbers are reflective of just bad quarterback play. And Baker Mayfield, if this team wants to get where they need to go and improve and win these games down the stretch, he's just going to have to play better. there's no excuse about it. We can't complain about tipped interceptions much longer. Baker Mayfield's got to start making plays, got to start throwing more touchdowns, got to start completing more of his passes. And I understand if he's going to throw interceptions, but you have to bring the goodies if you're going to throw the interceptions. And right now, 5 touchdowns on 56% completion percentage is just not it. So Baker Mayfield has to simply play better. And that's going to change a lot on this offense if Baker Mayfield simply plays like the Baker Mayfield we know he could be. Now, let's go to the company. While I've been hesitant to blame OBJ and Jarvis and, the receiving options on the team for Baker Mayfield's lack of success, they still have a piece in this. Catch percentage, the statistic works like this. Guys who are down the field options that are elite or very good, like Jarvis and OBJ, generally have close to 60, low 60s catch percentages. And then there are guys who are check down guys who are reliable options. The third slot receiver, those guys normally are in that 70% range with the running backs because those are check downs. Those are guys you go to that aren't really contested. And it is interesting that there is not a tight end or a wide receiver on this team that is even close to that catch percentage. That says a lot about the offense, and we'll talk about that later. So yes, while Baker Mayfield has not played well, Jarvis and OBJ are still playing lower than average, dropping more balls than normal. And right now, the only player who's really stepped up in both lanes is Nick Chubb, which was not really what we expected coming into the season. So I have to hand the company about one slice of that pie. Now, I'm going to say something here that is not a popular opinion and that a lot of you will not agree with. I don't think the offensive line is as big as a problem as we think it is. Now, I have some numbers to back up why I feel this way, but it is something that I think everybody should pay attention to. All right. So in 2018, when Baker had a good year, the offensive line gave up 2.3 sacks a game. So far in 2019, this offensive line has given up only 2.6 sacks a game. An increase, but not a big enough increase to explain the drop in quarterback play. Now, allow me to break this stat down even further. In 2018, through 6 games, the Browns gave up 16 sacks. In 2019, through 6 games, the Browns gave up 16 sacks. Now, some of you might hear that and be shocked. Some of you might hear that and say, hey, Quincy, but remember, Baker Mayfield was really bad in those first few games that he started. It really wasn't until Hugh Jackson got fired that he started to play better, which is true. But let's look at Baker's first 6 starts in 2018 when the line was bad. And let's look at the first 6 starts in 2019 when the line was bad and see if there's a difference there. So if we just take Baker's first 6 starts and not the first 6 games of 2018, you get a different number of times that Baker was sacked, which is actually higher than the 2018 number. So in Baker's first 6 starts of 2018, he was sacked 20 times. That's 3.3 times a game. 20. Last year, 20 sacks, 3.3 times a game. In Baker Mayfield's first 6 starts of 2019, he has been sacked 16 times. This year, when Baker's playing bad, 16 sacks versus last year, 20 sacks, and 16 is only 2.6 sacks a game. So what that means is that Baker so far in this season has had better protection than he did in his first 6 starts last season. Almost a whole sack's worth a game difference. So it's a significant difference of play. The line is significantly better in Baker's first 6 starts this year than they were last year. But despite Baker having less protection, being sacked more times a game, Baker in those 6 games this year, he has been less accurate, he has thrown less touchdowns, and has thrown more interceptions. So while unfortunately or fortunately, whatever your perspective is, the offensive line is undoubtedly going to be the public scapegoat, I don't think they're the bulk of the problem. Now, you can look at this 2 ways. There's the pessimistic way of looking at this and saying that your quarterback's a dud, he regressed and he can't handle pressure and he's getting even worse. He's bad. There's no way you can fix it. That is one way to look at it, and that is a valid way that you could choose to look at it. I don't agree with that. Second way to look at this is I don't think Baker Mayfield's issue and why he's played worse is that he's being under pressure consistently. I just don't think that's the problem. I think that is something that Baker Mayfield could be good with, and that showed he is good with. I think it's an easy narrative to put out there because the Browns' offensive line this year is bad, but if you really dig in, I don't think that's Baker Mayfield's issue. I think the issues with this offense are more schematic than they are about the offensive line. Because the fact is, Baker Mayfield was under more pressure last year than he is this year, and he did not look this bad, and he was less experienced. I don't think the fact that he got more experience means he got worse at being under pressure. I think there is something schematically going on that is not allowing Baker to be able to thrive in the way that Baker can. That is why I'm only giving the offensive line one slice of this pie, even though they're probably going to get the full brunt of the pie because they're the easiest thing to point at that people aren't going to freak out on publicly. But let's go to what I think the bulk of the problem is, and that is the coaching. Now, let's talk to who I think is really the problem on offense. And I hate to put the blame on one person, but it's the one variable that has really changed that would affect the offense in a negative way that you can point at. And it's not Freddie Kitchens. It's not Baker Mayfield. It's Todd Monken's offense. So remember that catch percentage issue I was talking about earlier? Part of that is because this offense barely uses checkdown. It's fundamentally why they would opt for a down-the-field threat like Antonio Callaway rather than a reliable checkdown, good hands guy like Rashard Higgins. Now, this offseason, you kind of saw the Browns do that subtly, right? Because the Browns got rid of their two biggest checkdown threats, Darren Fells and Duke Johnson. Now, Duke Johnson was for contractual reasons. He just didn't want to be here, and he saw his role diminishing. But maybe Duke saw his role diminishing in more ways than one because we all knew he was going to get buried on the depth chart behind Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. But maybe Duke saw that this offense from Todd Monken did not allow him to go into the flat a lot as a check down option as a second running back. And while I don't think these two players are so great that they have created this issue with the Browns, I think the offensive philosophy that has led to their expendableness is. Last year, Todd Monken had a highly ranked offense in Tampa Bay. It's part of the reason why everybody wanted him here this offseason. And he was able to have that highly ranked offense because he had a clear template of how he uses personnel, and he uses personnel really well. He had a clear number one, that was Mike Evans. Chris Godwin, who was a reliable number two. He had to take the top off the defense guy in Deshaun Jackson, and he had Chris Humphries, the check down guy. Now, what's weird to me and what I don't get is that it's not like the Browns don't have personnel to match those use cases. They clearly have those pieces in the wide receiver room. They have a clear number one in Odell, a reliable two in Jarvis. They have a take the top off guy in Antonio Callaway, and they have a check down guy in Rashard Higgins. And not to mention, Nick Chubb's in the backfield. Nick Chubb's one of the best running backs in the NFL. But for whatever reasons, Freddie Kitchens and Todd Monken have simply elected not to use these players in the roles that they should be used in. Remember Monday Night Football against the San Francisco 49ers? I know, I already erased it from my mind. But remember how much of a disaster Antonio Callaway was. He was misaligned, he made mental errors, and that was because they put Antonio Callaway in a position he had never played with this team before. They put Antonio Callaway, the dude with the least reliable hands on the team, at the slot. That makes no sense to me. They had Antonio Callaway doing the Chris Humphries thing. Of course that went terrible. Once I realized that, I had to forgive Callaway for a lot of mistakes it was because it's pure incompetence to put Antonio Callaway in that position coming off suspension when you know Antonio Callaway is not a slot receiver in any way in the NFL at this point in his career. Maybe later, but not now. That's not what he can do well. And of course it led to misalignment and mental errors because Antonio Callaway probably never expected the Browns to put him in that position. Now to give the Browns credit, the report came out that they switched Antonio Callaway back to his old position. They're not going to use him where they used him anymore. And, Higgins was coming back, so we're optimistic for the Seattle game, thinking, hey, Higgins is going to fill that Chris Humphries role. They're going to have all their guys in line. Baker's finally going to have the check down guy that he has needed all season. But Rashard Higgins didn't play at all. And that has to be due to mismanagement. Leaving Baker Mayfield to rely, and I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but the guy who has been playing that good hands guy is Ricky Seals-Jones. And while I think Ricky Seals-Jones is a lot better than what I expected him to be, I think Rashard Higgins is a much better option to have in that role. You know, even explaining that out loud, it makes me frustrated. The same frustration I feel when I watch the game, so I feel like this is it. So no matter how you want to split it up between Freddie Kitchens and Todd Monken, they're both a huge part of what the hell is going wrong with the Browns, because there's some mismanagement going on with the personnel, and they're just not using personnel correctly. And schematically, they're giving Baker Mayfield no options to get rid of the damn ball. That's why he's holding on to it. That's why he's getting hit so much. And that is why he's making so many bad decisions, because he's thinking, I got to throw this. I don't got nobody to throw to. Let me just throw it in the middle of the field, see what happens. And it's not putting him in a great position to succeed. And that is why I think Freddie Kitchens and Todd Monken deserve 4 whole slices. Now, let's talk about the bad news. Bad news is that for the 100th year in a row, the head coach and the quarterback are the problem. The good news is that this is a much different problem and a much more fixable problem than in years past. Because when the team had Pat Shurmur and like Colt McCoy, you knew they couldn't execute, not because they were just terrible schematically, not just because Colt McCoy is a young quarterback, it was because they were both physically incapable of being successful. So that is not the issue that I see there. Honestly, I see a lot of good things out there when you actually look at what the team's doing on tape. There's a lot of plays out there for the team to make. They just have to execute better. So while this is the same flavor of issue that has drove Browns fans crazy, and while I can't blame them for not being patient on this, I really think that this is the final head coach quarterback issue that is worth being patient. While I lay a lot of blame on the coaching staff for why Baker Mayfield has not been successful, Baker Mayfield has also been confused a lot on offense, and I think his confusion plus the spot that they leave him in with the scheme of this offense has led to Baker Mayfield being put in some terrible situations to where he has thrown way, way too many interceptions and not enough touchdowns. But I think Baker Mayfield's going to get a better grasp. I think he's going to turn it around, and I think this team's going to be a lot better in the second half of the season. I think some of the schematic issues that are killing the Browns are going to be fixed. I think that some of the personnel management issues that are plaguing the Browns right now are going to be fixed. Right now, the offense feels like a tug of war rather than a compromise. And I think that the Browns going into the bye with a 2-4 record is reason enough for everybody to look at themselves and realize that there needs to be a compromise instead of a battle. If there still is a tug of war and not a compromise here soon, expect some heads to roll in a few weeks, probably Todd Monken. But once they settle whatever the issue is on offense and start to be more consistent and manage these players better, I think it's going to make a world of difference. That is why I think the Browns are going to be okay. Their problems are frustrating. They're angry problems. They're problems that will make you angry, but they're fixable. In years past, the problem has been we're starting Deshaun Kaiser at quarterback. In past years, the problem has been, well, Cam Irvin's the best we got at right tackle. In past years, the problem has been our best running back is Isaiah Crowell. In past years, the problem has been our best defensive player was Jamie Meter. These are not the same level of problems. These are internal problems that can be fixed. Teams can come back from these problems, and they do come back from these problems all the time. And if the Browns are who we think they are, they'll come back from those problems. So that's what I think is going to fix the Browns and what the Browns' problem is. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think the Browns' problem is and what you think is going to fix that problem. But thank you guys for watching. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and ding that notification bell so you can be notified when I upload. But thank you for watching. Have a great day. Have a good night.